We have a gaming background originally for Animoca. We have been doing games, right? So the paradigms are shifting, but actually, I don't think it's that different from the real world. That all is the case anyway. They're going to be better at it if they're not already.
Great explanation, by the way. I love it. Hey guys, welcome to the Human and Machine Crypto channel, where we talk to the teams developing some of the hottest technologies in the blockchain space around the world. I am Tlawi, the human, who every day is falling in love more and more with everything blockchain, your co-host for the day. And with me,
the machine, also known as Hikaru, a crypto junkie glued to everything and anything blockchain. So for those of you who are watching, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and also share our content because we have lots and lots of interviews coming up. So who do we have today, Mr. Human?
Well, today is like talking with a legend, actually. Well, it's a legend. His name is Yat Siu, co-founder and chairman of Animoca Brands. Did I say it right yet?
That's correct.
Yeah? Okay, so look, if I read everything about Animoca brand, it's going to take like half the time of the program because it's just impressive. And for many people, they will be like, what is that? But this is like an umbrella company, right? That it's actually holding lots of super famous projects. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? First about how are you doing? And then tell us everything about Animoca.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. And as mentioned, I'm Yat, chairman of Animoca Brands. And maybe just to quickly sort of recap, Animoca Brands has been really sort of building out in the non-fungible token space for almost 4 years at this point. Sounds crazy, but it doesn't seem that long ago. But when you go back, 2017, 2018 is actually quite a while back in relative terms. And we really got involved initially because of our involvement with CryptoKitties, which became Dapper Labs and which became shareholders. And they're probably most well known for NBA Top Shot today and many of the other stuff and the Flow protocol. But separately from that, we ended up becoming sort of early investors in Axie Infinity, in OpenSea, with Wax, Decentraland, Bitski, and over 80 companies today. But also from our own group companies, probably our most well-known project is the Sandbox, which I think, I describe it as the digital Manhattan. Everyone wants a piece of land there and develop on it, from celebrities, famous people, and others who really want to sort of build out the metaverse. And so, Animoca Brands really built out that vision back then when we saw what non-fungible tokens could do for digital property rights. And so we basically decided that was something Animoca Brands wanted to sort of be at the center of. We have a gaming background originally for Animoca. We have been doing games basically, as a mobile game company since 2010, 2011, in the early days of mobile. So we have a gaming pedigree. And we also have worked with many brands and IP. That's why we're called Animoca Brands. And we have worked with famous IP before. And when the intersection of non-fungible tokens and gaming came into potentially full view, of course, back then it was hard to know where it's going to go. We decided to combine our gaming expertise, our, at that time, growing blockchain expertise, which was still early, and of course, our brand expertise. And so we have now amassed over 300 different kinds of brand IP for digital collectibles, for NFTs, and so on, which of course today is perhaps much more expensive and valuable than it was 3 years ago when we signed up many of those deals. Yeah. So I think it was all part of a vision we hoped would happen. For me, it was going to happen no matter what, but like we thought it was going to happen. The question always is when, right? It's people can, I think many people are able to predict where the future might go, but they cannot predict the timing. Right, that's the hardest part, and I think a combination of COVID, of market circumstance, of global issues, all combined, created sort of what we saw in the last 6 months as sort of what I consider a digital property rights revolution, embodied with NFTs, and I think the background to all of this is that we're just at the beginning, right? So even though it seems incredible, the results that we see with our portfolio and our own businesses. Even with F1 Delta Time and Revv Racing and so on, like the demand is there, the volume is there. People want to play the games. The play to earn has now become a thing, right?
Yeah.
But it's but still, we still have maybe just 1 million plus people, doing that, in the world, right? So it's still very, very early, and so we're very excited. To me, this is like 10 to 20 more years of rapid development as far as I'm concerned.
Really? Wow, 10 to 20 years you foresee? Because a lot of people, they see Axie as like, no, it's saturated, it's over. It's like,
well, I mean, I think of this as the
starting.
internet, right? This is like, I see the movement of what we see here, like the internet in 99, 2000. And while it looked like things were growing really fast and then accelerating even further between the years that have come to pass, actually, even today, 20 years after the fact, they're still growing, right? I mean, you don't see any of those internet companies reducing. And even if you were to tell us just a few years ago that the average market caps of those technology companies were going to be in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 trillion, many of us would have said, that's ridiculous. That's just, how can that happen? And here we are.
Still sounds ridiculous now. Right now, it's like, what?
Yes, but here we are, and they are worth that much, right?
Amazing.
So,
I have a question for you both. The human, I am the human because I am the one that is just an average person, right? Getting into things and is not as knowledgeable as obviously you two. So you said that you weren't into NFTs long, like for at least 4 or 5 years. Did the term exist already? Non-fungible tokens?
Well, I mean, the background really was that non-fungible tokens really was coined in a big way by CryptoKitties, which was launched in late November 2017. We became publishers of CryptoKitties in January of 2018. So when we saw that, we're like, let's go. But of course, NFTs as a term is kind of obscure and abstract. And the idea of what's an NFT and what does it mean, it reminds me a little bit of the days when people were talking about, MP3s, right? What's an MP3? What does it stand for? What does it really mean? And then it became a term, right?
Okay,
and I think NFTs is kind of like that as well. It's sort of the realm of the geeky and sort of the, innovators, really super, super early adopters. And that term really, I would say is really effectively only 3 to 4 years old, right? So as an industry, as we know it, as the definition of NFTs, as we see it today, I think it's really only 3 or 4 years old. The concept of NFTs is older than that, but it's really sort of more abstract, and I would almost classify it as, quasi-theoretical.
Yeah, correct. Okay. Wow. That's incredible. A great explanation, by the way. I love it. Machine, any questions? I have like a million, but I need to give you some floor, man.
Yeah, sure. So I think, NFTs are obviously super hot, right? Like they're selling for $500,000 or even like 500,000.
Man, no, sorry. Let me interrupt you. I found Axie for $1.6 million.
It's going through the roof, yeah.
Because I'm buying some,
Right.
So just to let you know, I saw that, I was like, what? So please keep going.
Exactly. So that's the biggest question is people are asking like, why? Why are these like being sold for so much? And can you kind of shed light on that?
Yeah. So I think the one thing that when, from a meta, if we basically just want to go a little high level here, what you're actually buying is data, right? And the thing that I look at NFTs is it's refined data. It's basically the kind of data that we have made things happen, that have a network effect, that have a value proposition because of the community or because of its construct. And frankly, that is, going to the human aspect, what human creativity and achievement is all about. When a painter goes in, you're not buying his paintbrush or you're not buying the canvas. You're buying what's in his head. You're buying his idea, and he just uses the brush or whatever tool he uses to express that creative feeling, that concept, and imbues with it a form of value, whatever that may be, right? It could be big, it could be small, it could be meaningful, it doesn't matter, right? That is human achievement. That is creativity. When you buy an NFT, that is exactly what you're doing. You're buying that same creative achievement with one difference. You're taking data blocks which today we as users don't understand the value, right? It's like raw materials. I don't know what to do with it. And then we give the data to someone else and he makes something out of it. And that platform today is Amazon, Tencent, Facebook, one of those platforms, right? They refine the data and then they give you back a small benefit, right? So I feel like, that small benefit has created a kind of digital colonialism in which we are currently residing in. But what actually happens is that we are living with the most valuable aspect around it for the data, which is the network effect. The network effect is the thing that gives it value, right? What is Facebook? What is Amazon? What are these companies? It's the harvesting of the data that we give to them the creation of the network effect, and then the benefits in the selling of that network effect to others, or some value that we derive. Today, with NFTs though, I can buy a part of that network effect, that part of that data effect. When I buy an Axie, I'm not buying just a single Axie. I'm buying the whole community of the Axie community. I'm buying a part of the billions of dollars of trade that happens. I'm buying, a community of hundreds of thousands of Filipinos who are playing every day for a living. That's what I'm buying when I buy an Axie. I'm not buying one thing. I'm buying a community. And in the real world, we see this as well. If I buy a Hermes bag, or if I make a choice to buy a Nike shoe versus an Adidas shoe or a Puma shoe, what am I buying? Right? None of those shoes will make me run faster, right? Except that I'm buying something that adds to the community because my friends have it, because LeBron James uses it, right? That's what I'm doing. So we're really buying everything that is of our human achievement, and has very little to do with the functional aspect of it in and of itself. Of course, there's a basic function for it, but that's what we're doing. And that network effect is what we're getting into. So now the question, why are NFTs so valuable? Because they have a network effect, right? If the network effect is big, then the value of the NFT is big. Why am I buying a Rolex for that kind of money? Because it means something, because I'm part of a club or I'm part of a membership. Again, the material of the Rolex is perhaps not that valuable itself. But now that I have a Rolex, I'm a member of something, it means something to me and everyone else who is in that club. And that is something that is a network effect that I'm buying. And that same thing. Axie is worth $1.6 million. Our F1 Delta Time cars are worth $500,000. Sandbox land is worth, close to $1 million, right? For the bigger plots of land. And you get the capital benefits, because now that you have the network effect, you can mortgage it, you can lease it, you can rent it out, right? They're yield generating instruments. Just to close on this one, one of our cars not too long ago was sold in the aftermarket, an Apex car, which is a top sort of F1 Delta Time car, for 360,000 US. That car was worth maybe 7 or 10,000 US like a year ago. And people go, wow, that's a lot of money for some people, right? But the headline was interesting, because actually one of the magazines put a headline on it and basically said, here's a Lamborghini for 360,000, and here's this Apex car for 360,000. Which one makes you money, right? The Lamborghini is a depreciating asset. It's fun to ride, I'm sure, but it doesn't have a return, because it doesn't have sort of the same kind of return effect that the F1 Delta Time car has, which you can use as a yield generating instrument, because I'm racing on it and I'm making income, right? So the paradigms are shifting, but actually I don't think it's that different from the real world. It's just that we haven't transplanted our thinking.
Excellent
Amazing.
answer. Yeah. I'm kind of absorbed it all.
I mean, honestly, I'm like, you should write poetry as well. I'm surprised, because the way you make sense of things is just impressive. I mean, I have never seen so many concepts that are difficult to grab, right, into so simple, like terms, and it's really, I am really impressed. And was this vision always there? Was this clarity always there, or?
So I would say, like with many people in the field, as in any industry, and not just ours, I wouldn't say that the refining of the clarity that maybe you seem to be hearing, that comes from exercise and practice, and basically just telling people every time about this vision. And as time goes on, you also form that, right? It's like practice, right? If you do it many times.
Yeah, sure.
But I think this is the key thing, the feeling of where the industry needed to go, but that was always there, right? And so I think as people, that's what we do. We have a gut feel. We think this is right. We know this is right, but maybe we can't fully articulate it, right? A lot of people are super excited about true digital ownership, but the concepts around what it means in terms of governance, or in terms of maybe new institutions, maybe is a little alien at start, because we don't live in that, right? And I think the reason why, for us, we refined our thinking is because, we've done over 80 investments in the space. We're dealing in the industry. We're talking to lots of people. We're building projects, right? You just end up evolving the thinking around it. And, it becomes, I think, more sophisticated in time. But the broad vision, which is data rights and owning your data, has always been the same.
May I ask you a question? Personal. How old are you?
I'm 48.
48. Oh, yeah. Same here.
Yeah.
just Can you take us back to when you were 20? What was your vision there? Because all this, what I've seen about very successful people is that they actually always had this ingrained, like you just said, they had some idea that this is what works, or this is good for me, or this is my passion. And then, of course, one thing is knowing it, and the other one is acting upon it, right? So you had definitely walked that path, right? So, but tell me, the 20 years old kid, what was in his mind that got you to this point?
So maybe I'll go back a little further, because I think, thinking back, so I grew up in Austria, in Vienna. I was born there.
Okay.
So actually German is my mother tongue. It's kind of a bit
Okay.
different.
Wow. Interesting.
My parents were musicians, which is why they were in Vienna, and I studied music.
Of course.
And I was the only Chinese kid, probably in a 50 square mile radius in Vienna. We're talking about the 70s here, right? And and early 80s. And I think where this path started for me really was, not fully recognizing, of course, who I was. And I was like, obviously really a kid, like, 10 years old, moving to, when I was sort of 12 or 13, or maybe a little earlier, I started coding, and I uploaded some software onto what was then known as CompuServe, which was a pre-internet type of service. And the software was a MIDI software, which allowed people to compose. And, I just started telling people, hey, if you like my software, go send me some cash. I never thought anyone would send me money. It was just bragging rights. And then before, just a few months or so, I started receiving checks in the mail, right? And I didn't have a bank account. And I think, and that also led me to a job at Atari very soon after. And here what was interesting. It didn't matter that I was sort of a different sort of ethnic background. It didn't matter that I was a child, right? Basically, through the lens of the computer, skill was the only thing that mattered, or how you communicated and what you did. And I think that while I didn't fully understand that thinking until maybe later, but it was sort of that sort of, I guess, equitable lens where I saw a path where I wasn't restricted because of who I was, which I think definitely in Austria. And again, I wasn't subjected to, very sort of, Austria wasn't, at least for Asian people, very racist. Not that, but it was just, there was an innocent, what I could sort of innocent racism, ignorance, more like it, right? So the opportunities were capped. The things they think that you do, at the time, it was like, so which restaurant do your parents own? No, not all Chinese people have restaurants, right? But again, it's that kind of environment you grow up in, and I think that path has been sort of similar. When I go back to the 20-year-old kid. So later on, I went to the US to study computer science because Atari was like, well, you need to sort of be properly trained. Atari basically went under. And I started a business entirely virtually with 6 other people, and that business was acquired by SGI. And again, everything was done online. We were then early days internet, and I moved to Hong Kong through happenstance, and actually an acquisition. But anyway, and when I was in Hong Kong, because my dad's from Hong Kong, I ended up having a permanent identity card. I could just live here, and I realized nobody had internet, so I just started an ISP. And this was in '93. So I was, so that was basically sort of the beginning of the sort of, actually pre 20-year-old journey where I started one of Hong Kong's first internet service providers, not realizing at the time that there were only 30,000 people on the internet globally. Right. I mean, there was CompuServe and AOL, but that wasn't really internet. Right. And really probably a terrible business idea, because you still had to educate. People didn't know anything about it. When you go and put up the web page to go online, there was not much to see, right? It was like kind of like blockchain, frankly, sort of 6-7 years ago. And for me, it wasn't even a choice. It was just, this is the right way to go. We have to go online. It's a better place, right? Open source. There's great communities. I made friends online, right? I was playing online games like multi-user dungeons. So I was just in it, right? And again, it wasn't a strategy. It wasn't a, here's the master plan. This is, whatever. It just felt right. It was where I wanted to be. It was where I met the most interesting people. And so I thought everyone should have this. So let's go build an ISP to bring everyone in. And I think this is kind of the path which sort of later on, we sold that business. It's during the .com height. And then I started a business which basically sort of commoditized email, which was eventually sold to IBM. And it was kind of the same thinking. And I think the driver, which we hadn't really articulated until later, was that I think where I and us as a group feel most comfortable is that if we can do things with impact and purpose, we're happy to do that. There are many things we tried to do with impact and purpose that didn't work out quite so well, right? We were very focused on edtech, for instance. We were very early with sort of augmented reality in 2004, 2005, right? And again, I think the vision for that was probably correct. I think VR and AR had a place, but it was just too early, and it was difficult to sustain for us. So I think we knew what was right, but just when and how and timing. And I think age and wisdom does bring that when you kind of can put that into perspective. How you feel, whether you're sort of purposeful and passionate about it, I don't think that should change, right? Because if that's what you want to do, then you'll do that. But finding the right timing to do it, and sort of, and also, we're better connected. As a kid, you don't have the capital means, you don't have access to financing, you don't know how to make a pitch, right? You're just, I used to have very long hair as well, right? So this hippie kid that's out there telling us about the internet, 25 years ago, sort of, proclaiming that it's going to change your life is like, what? Right? So, all of that stuff, refines over time.
Yeah. Impressive, man. And that it doesn't surprise me or it didn't when you talk about your parents being musicians, because there is something about your demeanor and the way you express yourself that is very artistic.
Oh, thank you.
I can, I can. I was like, it's not the tech kind of person approach, even vocabulary or way of forming sentences. So, do you play any instruments?
So piano, flute, and cello is what I was studying.
Of course. Yeah, sure.
But that was, now, I mean, I'm not, this is not obviously what I do for a living.
No, I know. Yeah. But okay. Wow. Fantastic, man. Machine, please.
Yeah.
Go ahead, bro.
It's like you're like a modern superhero, like literally,
Exactly. That's why I just keep asking questions, man.
Cool. So I guess, back to modern day, right? You're talking about all these successes, and you mentioned a few projects like Sandbox, a lot of these. I was also looking at your website, and a really cool one, because I'm into racing and I like cars. Can you talk more about like Revv Racing?
Yeah. Sure, of course. Well, first of all, Revv Racing is basically esports racing, you could say. And the genesis of Revv Racing started when we first were working on F1 Delta Time, which is the official Formula One blockchain game. And just as a little bit of back history, we announced it, and then and did our first sales in 2019. Right? And back then, I remember when we actually the buyer of the first car was bought the car with the 111 for 111,000 US. It was intentional, but he had not announced himself who it was. It turned out to be the same buyer as who bought the Beeple for $69 million, Meta-COVID. And but what that sale told us at the time, and then the interest from other people, was that there was a market where you could actually create an economy in a racing environment that would mimic and be like the real world, as opposed to just based on skill in racing. So Revv Racing was the evolution of this, because with F1 Delta Time, because it's a licensed game, there were some things that we were restricted to do that we couldn't do because of license issues, right? So we decided that we're going to make a brand new game with a sort of a gaming and crypto first narrative, where you can own your cars, you can rent your cars, you can combine capital and labor, and you can also win prizes with skills, right? And so the cars are also intentionally, not sold. You basically would simply just farm them, right? And through activity, you would earn it. So it's really sort of play to earn, or do to earn the car. And then you would then be able to sell, trade, or use the car in the aftermarket. And we as a company would be sort of sustaining ourselves based on transaction volume, based on a cut of that. That was kind of the way that we had designed it. And we just launched it like 2 weeks ago with the drops. Today is actually the day where we're going to do the first race. $150,000 of prize money, up to 1,000 winners, right? And we've got sort of trading volume has started to pick up right now as well on OpenSea. It's on Polygon, which is also intentional because we wanted to make sure that the gas fees were very low, right? This was something that was a problem, with F1 Delta Time. But of course, the average car would now sell for 20,000 US, so gas doesn't matter. But how do we make an inclusive game if we're going to charge that kind of cash? So instead, Revv Racing is the answer to that. And the game was designed by a team of people that included professional experience with with Formula 3 and GT rally driving. So we really wanted to sort of bring in that experience. And we think we're going to sort of, create a kind of motorsports metaverse and completely change, we hope, the way that people perceive racing games. Because, when you play a normal racing game, the only ones who can participate, outside of the fact that you can't earn any money, which is a different thing altogether, is that you can only participate if you have skill. And I think that's a very exclusive way of looking at things. It's like if I want to enjoy basketball, well, I need to be able to play really, really well in a competitive level in order to do that. That's not inclusive, and that actually doesn't expand the sport. But gaming has that problem. Try to play games with your friends who have played it for a while, or just you always feel like you're being crushed every time because they just kick your ass, right? Yeah, exactly. So instead, with actual real economics in place, you can still participate, but passively, by owning the assets, or by building a team, by being an investor, or by being a sponsor. It doesn't really matter, but at scale, right? As opposed to the big stadium sort of I own the esports team type of way. Everyone can participate in a sort of more inclusive way, just like we have with sports in the real world. So I think that's what we aim to do with Revv Racing. And it's an alpha game, but in terms of racing games, I think it's the most sophisticated one on blockchain, and will continually improve, of course.
Right. Yeah, and as soon as there's real prizes, man, the competition is going to heat up for sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
We can already see some of the priming in the chat that's happening on Discord.
Nice. Cool.
Wow.
Yeah, Mr. Human, any comments?
Again, wow. No, to be honest, I have so many questions, but they are more on the human side rather than the business side. So I don't know how conducive is that. Do you have any other technicals before I keep digging this man's brain?
I'll let you take a question.
Yeah, well, this blockchain space, of course, it's and DeFi, right? People are trying to take advantage of it for monetary reasons, economic, financial, right? A lot of people who do that, or I'm including myself, right? Like, we look for ways of not finding success, but like doing the stuff that is necessary to get yourself, like to cross paths with success at some point in time. And a lot of successful people, and definitely you're one of them, and not just for monetary reasons, have very like particular ways of, for example, morning ritual, for example, right? A way of keeping their minds on track. I mean, your mind is very educated, right? In that regard, obviously, and that's why it goes back even to the instruments we were talking about. Normally, musicians, I also play instruments. I understand, like this dynamic, right? So, do you have anything special that you make sure your mindset is always in the right place during the day, or you just wing it?
So first, I think I'm blessed that I can work in an industry in which I am generally sort of passionate about. And I also feel blessed that I feel like the work that we're doing is meaningful and purposeful. Because at the end of the day, and I think that's what sort of makes me wake up super excited about what we're building. And frankly, my only curse is I need to sleep. Right? Because I feel correct. Like I gotta. There's so much to do, but it's all good, and I can put in the hours because it's work that I'm passionate about, that is important, I think, to the world. And why is it important? Is because I feel like we're at a point where we all need to own digital equity, because that's the next path. And I see the world, all the issues that we're having is because we don't own our data rights. Therefore, we have this growing inequity in part, and we no longer can determine what is real, what is not. So we need trust engines, which is what blockchain will deliver, but we also need to own sort of our creative data. Our creative lives is ours, right? And I think this is so the mission is kind of what drives me, right? We sacrificed in other ways to be where we are today. It wasn't just a case of spending money and spending time. We were a public company in Australia. We were listed. We had to give up our public listing amongst a lot of controversy in order to continue to be playing in this field, because at the time the stock exchange had concerns around our dealings in crypto, right? Because as you know, crypto, especially in late in 2019, had a very bad reputation because of everything that happened the year before. And while obviously we weren't involved in any of that, we had to make a choice. whether we are going to stop our path to what we think is important to the world or stay listed. And we chose, of course,
Freedom.
the freedom. Yes. However, it's a sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
So I think you can only do that if what you think you're building is that important, whether it's to you or to others. And I think if you are building to a purpose that's higher than you, then you're willing to do whatever it takes, right? And
Yeah.
I think and how do we keep that in mind? Well, we see the impact of the lives we're changing, whether it's through the portfolio or people making money, right? Especially during COVID, right? This has become the way for them to make income. I also have I also have I have a family of kids as well, right? And I have 3 kids, and obviously they grow up with privilege, but it's really important for them to understand what is equity and why is that important and what does that mean. And this is the other thing here as well when I think about sort of the messaging around the world is that we are not equitable for many reasons today, and we still suffer from an information sort of inequity, especially around finance, right? The reason why we have this divide as well is because the vast majority of people around the world are introduced to the true world of finance with debt, which is a horrible way to start your life in finance, right? Whether it's student loans, student debts, mortgaging a house, right? It's debt, right? Not and which means you're basically being trained to a form of indentured servitude indirectly because you have to pay back someone, right? We tell people from a startup standpoint, don't buy a house because the moment you do, you're stuck, right? You have to
Yeah.
pay a mortgage. Suddenly you start worrying about that. But that's also not right because after all, you need security and you need stability as well in order to construct something.
Right.
So how do we do this? And if we make sure through gaming, for instance, that our children know about the world of finance, by the time if they even have to go to college, they will have a portfolio. They can pay for everything. And why not, right? I think the world
Yeah.
will change because of that. So the purpose is really what drives it. Of course, I hike in the mornings. I go for walks. I spend time with family. All of that, and my wife, everything. All of that, I would say, is an element of grounding.
Mm.
But the mission is really what's important here.
Yeah. Sorry, machine. Just quickly, one more question or two. But I think this is very good for whoever is watching, right, or listening the podcast. Today, I want to get into all these opportunities to have all this digital stuff you're talking about, right? To have a portfolios. How do I do it? And if you don't mind, second question, and I know we went over the 30 minutes, I'm sorry, but it's worth, you talk about kids, right? Like I have a 1-year-old kid, right? And I'm like, I don't want him to play games. I don't want him to look at the phone. But now it's like I'm going to go and get the latest Samsung for him to start earning his food, right? So it's 2 questions. It's a single question for 2 people for 2 kind of segments, right? The average human, how would you start? Let's say with $1,000 or $3,000 or $5,000. How would you start your portfolio? Right? What would be your strategy? And as a dad of a 1-year-old or 2 years old or 3 years old, how would you initiate?
Sure. So first of all, when it comes to portfolio, right? If you want to just get into the space, there are many ways of doing it. Whether it is on Sandbox, whether it's Axie Infinity, F1 Delta Time, I would basically first pick a community that is closest to you, because when it comes to NFT and gaming, it is very much the community in the world that you're most comfortable with. If you like motorsports, go to Revv Racing, go to F1 Delta Time. If you are sort of looking to join the largest community that has the most liquidity, maybe join Axie Infinity, right? And they've got some great games there as well. If you are comfortable with the concepts on real estate and that's a world that you were familiar with, Sandbox, right? And building out those experiences. The space is young. My general view is that if you go with the mature players, it is difficult to not have some value. And if it's $1,000, at worst, you'll have a great education, but at best, you'll probably be able to make a return, because I view the space as like, buying real estate wherever you are living today, 30 or 40 years ago, right? You look at the macro, there are 2.7 billion gamers. There's 4 to 5 billion people online. there's like 8 to 9 billion people in the world, and there's maybe 1.5 million people that have NFTs, right? The gap is huge, right? So unless you believe that NFTs is going to be simply limited to a max audience of 10 million people, which, by the way, some people think it's a fad, right? So there is that, right? But if that's what you believe, then maybe you shouldn't invest at all. But if you do believe that digital property rights is important and that non-fungible tokens represent that, then really you are still at the earliest of stages, and they can grow. I mean, if you look at, for instance, the legacy of things like CryptoPunks and now Bored Apes, and and sort of Genesis ones like sort of afterwards like Meebits, these are ones, who built it, what's the background. I think of it almost like as sort of art from the Renaissance. Not everything is going to be a Mona Lisa, but if you're able to get some pieces of art, even from sort of obscure artists from that era, it will accrue value because it was such a pivotal time, right? So that's kind of where we are right now. That's obviously not going to be there forever, right? Because of the fact that the market matures. And so I think we're still at this stage. So the key is just to make sure that when you buy NFTs, you buy it with credible projects, with credible teams, because it's very hard for a new person to determine the credibility of a project in and of itself, right? The tools aren't there for a layman to know, is the metadata right? Is it on IPFS? All these things. Mm-hmm. So following the groups and organizations that have sort of best reputations or recommended reputations, who do they follow? Who are their signals, right? It's a study as well. I mean, it's like if you said, if I wanted to buy art, you don't just go, let's go buy the first thing that comes out from Sotheby's, right? You study it, right? I tell people about entering the NFT space, it's like buying a car. People don't just walk into a store and buy a car like candy, right? Maybe some do, but most of us don't, right? We think about it. We what's a utility? Does it have value? Is there a resale mechanic? Is there, can I sell it to someone? What's the service support, right? Who's here to help me when the car has a problem? Can I easily change the tires, or do I have to wait 3 months, to be delivered from Italy, right? I mean, these are all things that you come into thinking when you research the purchase of a car. I think NFTs is exactly the same. You have to study it. It's maybe you don't need to make money from it, but it's still a conscious, purposeful decision. And that value process is more valuable than the $1,000 you put in. Meaning, in that time, how many people learn about the ins and outs of a good car before they buy the car, right? Mm-hmm. Suddenly they know about the engine. Suddenly they know about what's comfortable. Sure. Suddenly they know everything. And then they can make an informed decision. That's the path. And I recommend this for everyone. It's not even the money, right? In terms of children, this is the future, right? And, so in the time when we were very focused around sort of ed tech, I was one of the most focused sort of, and we've co-founded some ed tech companies, and I'm on the board of a number of schools, because that's still something that I feel passionate about. It's just so hard to make money there. But anyway, that's a different story altogether. I sometimes joke about the fact that I make money in one industry and I spend it all on ed tech. I still do that, right? I still spend on education. I still fund companies because I think it's important. But I won't ask anyone to invest with me because it's such a tough area. But anyway, going back to this point, parents ask this question to me a lot because they're like, "Oh, I don't want my children to be playing games and whatever." And what I tell them is that the world in which they are in, this is their world. It's a space we don't understand. And there's an interesting study. I forget who cited it, but basically they were saying like 91% of all kids play games. Okay, that doesn't surprise us probably, right? For me, it's more surprise the 9% they're not playing games. What are they doing, right? But what's interesting is that juxtaposed against how many parents play games with their kids, it's like 10% or 8%. Yeah. But you replace games with another kind of game, which is sports, like basketball, right? And the number changes way high. It's like 70 or 80%. And even if I'm not able to play with you, I'll watch your basketball game. I'll watch your swimming. I'll watch your football game. So I have an understanding. I see what's happening. But with games, you're in a screen. I'm not there. I can't see it. And so it's alien to me. So the only thing I see as a parent is a person who's looking at a screen. And then here's the other thing. I tell them, parents say, "Oh, it's dinner time." But right at that moment in time, he's probably in the middle of a match. He's probably playing with 5 of his friends. And when, someone comes and turns off the computer because they're mad because they didn't come in for dinner. What happens is you let down your community, you let down your friends, and then you're supposed to sit on the dinner table and be happy
Smile.
and smile. And no, you're ill-tempered because
Sure.
because of the games. But
Of
actually,
course.
if he was playing a football game and he was in the middle of a match, maybe with 15 more minutes to go, nobody would say dinner time, right?
No,
right?
no.
To me, it's not a question of sort of the digital aspect. It's still a human aspect. It's just that we lack the generational understanding because we're not in their worlds. And I think the other thing is, with technology, size and experience and traditional aged skill doesn't matter, because the fact that I am taller makes no difference in a video game, right? So as a young kid, I can be good at basketball, I can be good at football vis-a-vis my children, so we can have a relationship where you can still gain from that. But in video games, chances are most parents are going to be pretty bad at it, right? And in fact, it's the children who will lead them. And in my also own experience, if parents are open to create peer relationships with their children, I think it's very empowering for children. Because of course, as parents,
Sure.
The relationship I have with my parents, or my mom in particular, is really one more around where it's more frankly hierarchical because of the way that we were raised, right? It's not one that I think we should have with our children today. It's not one I aspire to have, because we live longer, life is different, and so which means we have to be more open to our vulnerabilities. We have to be, we can't be best at everything. We can't know all the answers. In fact, we shouldn't, right? And we can't,
Definitely.
right? And I think that's something that we're not as comfortable because of the way that we brought up. But with the virtual world, that all is the case anyway. They're going to be better at it if they're not already. So you need to be willing to be in their hands as opposed to them in yours.
Wow. Beautiful, man. Absolutely. Like, just fantastic. Thank you very much. And this is from a very personal perspective. I swear you have really like shined light in a place that I just was, because I'm not a gamer, I never played. I never liked those things ever. My father bought the one thing that goes like this thing and the little ball, right? And I played like 3 times and never again, because I'm an action oriented person. So, but now you just put a completely different perspective ahead of me. Thank you very much. Machine, something else to wrap this conversation?
I mean, today's discussion was just full of virtue, and we can go on and on. Unfortunately, right, we do need to wrap up, but I'm thinking we can dedicate a video for like each of these different projects, like Revv, Sandbox, and just really dive in, because they're all very different and unique in their own ways. So yeah, we do invite you, Yacht, to just really, go dive deeper into these projects.
Yeah.
No, that would be a pleasure. So, and thank you. And I think one of the things that we would love to do is, as we educate the space, we do feel that we need to evangelize the space and we need to inform people about it. And that's, so maybe one of the steps could be going deep diving into maybe the mechanics or why it matters. There's a lot of stuff here that is beyond philosophical, of course, that has real purpose and meaning.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it would be fantastic if you or the CEOs of your different companies jump in, and like you say, evangelize, right? Like sometimes we feel like, we know everything. Yeah, but like you said, we're like 10, right? Even me, like after so much exposure, I feel, I know quite a lot already. But the next person has never heard of MetaMask or ETH or anything at all, right? So yeah, it would be fantastic if we could do that, man, because
absolutely,
we didn't have any time, and I'm the one to blame mostly, because I was really like it's just so enjoyable to listen to you, my friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else to wrap up, Mr. Machine? Anything else you want to say yet?
I think, we'll cover more videos, but for everyone who's watching, there's so much to learn, so much to explore. So go to animocabrands.com. Follow the socials. And then just be involved and really learn. It's really about learning and getting hands-on with NFTs.
Absolutely. And maybe I'll add one thing. If you do want to get your hands on an NFT to start, with Revv Racing, the first entry-level NFTs are all earned, meaning that
Oh,
you don't have to pay for any of them. In fact, we don't sell any NFTs for the first for these ones. So you can join events, you can do stuff. You simply earn the NFT by doing, and that's how we think the world should be anyway. And so we think we're sort of living by those principles with the launch of Revv Racing.
well, man, I have it right now in front of me, and you can be sure that I'm going to do something about it because I just you just put some. I'm so curious, right? So yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Thank
No
you very
excuse
much.
not to
Yeah,
get an NFT now, Mr. Human.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
Thank you so
correct.
much.
Now it was a beauty, man. Like we really appreciate your time and the wisdom and all the amazing stuff you have shared with us. And please just get us all your CEOs that must be really amazing people, so
Yes.
they talk each about the project and people really get to understand these things, right? And
Will do.
maybe one day we do one only Revv and like just take it bits, bit by bit, and people understand more. Thank you very much again. And well, thank you very much for everyone for watching this program. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. And see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Like, share, and subscribe. Bye, guys.
By the way, yeah. Machine, what do you think, buddy?
Oh, man. For this episode, honestly speaking, everything that Yas says speaks for itself. It's very touching and inspirational.
Yeah, it's like golden nuggets, just like just coming out of his mouth, man, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. Like the ability to really see the next big thing before people realize it, the internet, ed tech, and then now NFTs. We're literally at the precipice of something great about to explode. And yeah, I'm glad our audience
and if
is
you think
learning
about it,
this now.
yeah, man, yeah. I mean, this guy, if I'm not incorrect, I don't think I'm that incorrect saying like maybe he started making real money out of this kind of skills and vision since he was like 10, 12, 13, 14, working for Atari later. I mean, and then how many companies did he set up and sold already? I mean, and he's a very young man still, right? 48 years old for so many accomplishments are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, his vision it's just wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think in this
I'm
case,
super-
I'd really just get
yeah.
hands-on. So really learn about the Revv Racing, Sandbox, all those projects, and it should be fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Theoretically.
Yeah, honestly, the only thing that I think we have to change a little bit of the narrative is that NFTs already are too expensive. Like if you listen around, everything is like $1 million and $3 million, and then you have this like $500. Can I do something about it? Can I with it? And of course, he just said so, right? Yes, you can. Probably it's not the plot that today is the most valuable, but probably it's the plot of land that in 10 years is just as valuable as the most valuable is today, right? So, and I'm serious. I'm going to check it from today. I'm going to play it because I've been procrastinating because I was getting into DeFi, right? 6-8 months on this, like growing from not knowing anything, crypto trading, DeFi, and now it's the NFT, right? But this is a very accelerated learning for me.
Yeah, and again, it's play to earn. So like, have fun, right?
Yeah. Wonderful, man. It was amazing, man. I mean, and I can't wait to listen to the guys at Sandbox and all these other ventures that Yad has, right? So
yeah,
it would be
that's exactly why
really
you should
cool.
subscribe.
I think we have to
so
get
you
that.
don't miss those videos.
Yeah. We always forget telling you to subscribe, but it's worth. Education is super important. We know there's a lot of channels telling you signals, when to buy, when to sell, but those things are, they're short term. You can make very good money, but that money should be invested somewhere, and probably NFTs should be the place, right? It seems to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very good episode.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Human.
I loved it, man. I loved it. Yeah. Take care of yourself, and see you next time.
See you guys.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye. I'm so curious, right? So yeah, why not?